Do you know what object-centric process automation is? Hi, my name is Andreas Hense and I make videos on business process automation. Today I want to talk about object-centric process automation. And if you haven't heard of this before, it is because I think I just invented this terminology. I looked it up on the internet and I couldn't find any entries for it. So what do I understand by object-centric process automation? Well, it's a way of building process-aware information systems with business process management systems that are extended by objects as first-class citizens. Let me first start by explaining where the idea came from. The first motivation came in an interview that I conducted with Will van der Aalst. And in this interview, Will talked about the lack of success that ordinary business process management systems had. And he said it was naive to believe that systems like SAP could be replaced by these simple business process management systems that only knew workflow specifications and cases and more or less linear processes with case IDs and dealing with data and so on and so forth. The second motivation came from my own experience with industry projects where we had used YAWL to automate business processes. And they were of different complexity, different levels of complexity, but even in one of the simpler ones where we developed several workflows for personnel management, we already observed that using just the business process management system, workflow specification and workflow cases was not enough. And we soon discovered that there were actually objects outside of the scope of the single case and also outside of the scope of the workflow specification that were there. And these objects, they were, for example, the personnel or positions that the personnel could take. They had their own existence and they were referenced from the workflow cases. And so when there is a task dealing, for example, with a person, then the person is not merely data that is only living inside of the case of the workflow specification, but it is an object that lives outside and that also exists after the case has been finished, and it also exists for other specifications. And that was an observation that led us to create a special mechanism for creating a persistence layer that was in addition to the workflow management system. And I'm convinced that this topic of communication between different cases and between different workflow specifications, that this is really something that hasn't been looked at so much in the literature. And it's very important, and I think having objects as first-class citizens living somewhere in a database is the solution to this problem, and is more elegant than, for example, using message passing between different workflow cases and things like that. So this was the observation. And now what is the idea? The idea would be to extend existing business process management systems by the notion of objects. That you can, in a system that is extended, that you can create your own objects, and that you can model something like an entity relationship model or an object-oriented model. It really doesn't matter as long as you have these relations one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many between entity types. And then you can somehow use the CRUD operations for creating, reading, updating and deleting objects in the tasks of the workflow specification. And that, from my point of view, would solve this issue, this problem that business process management systems had so far. And the second advantage would be that you now can create object-centric event logs directly from these systems if you build new systems using these extended business process management systems. So I would be very interested to hear what you have to say about this. What do you think of this idea? Do you think it is feasible? Do you know systems where something similar is already possible? Please let me know in the comments. Thanks very much for watching.